Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. We're going to take care of Article 3 of the Constitution today as we continue our Constitution for Dummies series. I didn't call you a dummy. You're not a dummy. You're very smart. So sit back and relax. Let's see if we can explain what the Constitution says about the judicial branch. So go grab a bag of popcorn and we can shove your face with food and with learning. Giddy up. Alright, so there's 3 sections to Article 3, and Section 1 basically says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. It goes on to say that these judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall at times receive for their services a compensation, which shall never be diminished for their continuance in office. And what this basically does is 3 things. It says there's going to be a Supreme Court. But it doesn't really say anything else about the makeup of that Supreme Court. And then it goes on to say, other courts say, I don't know. I don't know. Congress, you do. And Congress will go on to do that, creating the Federal District and Appeal Court system and the 1789 Judiciary Act. So Congress has a lot of power over kind of the makeup of what the court looks like in terms of number and size and not scope so much, but definitely what kind of court system we're going to have. And of course, we have a kind of a pyramid court system, everything leading, all roads leads to Oz, all roads lead to the Supreme Court. But then it goes on to say that the judges, both courts, all federal judges, inferior courts, and the Supreme Court shall hold their offices during good behavior. So that means that as long as they're not robbing a 7-Eleven, they have their jobs for life. For life. Why would they give them jobs for life? They give them jobs for life so they can protect them from the masses. If you look at some of the quotes from the Federalist Papers, I really love the idea of elite theory. All communities divide themselves into the few and the many. The first are well and rich poor, the second are turbulent and changing. Therefore give power to the first so they may check the unsteadiness of the other. So if you have this court system where people are being appointed for life, that they really don't have to kind of respond to the whims of the majority, of the factions, of maybe the larger group of people that want to, I don't know, steal property from rich people and redistribute it. The other side of that coin, of course, is that it also protects equity. It protects the idea that if I want to rule for something that I believe is justice orientated, like let's say gay marriage, and I'm from Alabama in a federal district court, I don't want to have to run for re-election there. Nothing against the good folks of Alabama, but gay marriage not so popular. So when it comes down to what's popular and what the Constitution says according to the conscience of that judge, they don't have to flip a coin. They can do what they want because they have jobs for life. And then it goes on to say that they gonna get paid. They gonna get paid. You can't diminish their salary. And then we go to Section 2. Batter up. Kind of a side note, but according to Section 1, if you think about it, that the courts are created, inferior courts are created by Congress, this means that FDR's court packing plan, 1937, the reorganization plan that he brought to Congress to add justices to the Supreme Court, is technically constitutional. Congress has that ability, and if they wanted to, they could have increased the size of the Supreme Court. Of course, they set the number at 9 a long time ago, but they could reorganize that number and set it higher. Of course, that would give the president probably too much power. So Section 2 is about jurisdiction and the power of the Supreme Court, and this is where we get a little bit foggy about kind of what judicial review is. In Section 2, it only talks about original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction are court cases the court would hear directly, and it lays out, I believe, consuls or ministers, ambassadors, states suing states. But then it gives appellate jurisdictions if there's court cases that are involving citizens against citizens of other states or citizens against states they don't live in, and basically according to law and fact the Supreme Court would have the ability to hear appeals on these types of matters. But nowhere in there does it talk about judicial review. Judicial review is discussed in the Federalist Papers. I believe it's Federalist Paper number 78. Watch me check. I'm right, it's 78. Hamilton makes the argument that the Supreme Court or the federal court should have some type of oversight over legislation, but that's nowhere in Section 2. All it talks about is kind of very broad idea of original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction. However, we know from studying history that the court gives themselves this power when it hears the court case in 1803, correct me if I'm wrong, Marbury versus Madison. And we're not going to get into the depths of this case. It's called the Midnight Judge case. But basically, the court for the first time is hearing a matter of policy, a law that was passed, a congressional action, some type of occurrence. And they make a ruling, and then they decide that that action, that law, is unconstitutional. And everybody kind of accepts the findings. And this becomes the power of judicial review, that we're going to allow the Supreme Court to hear these types of matters when we have laws that are up in the air. When one side claims foul and says that this law or this presidential action isn't in accordance with the Constitution. So therefore, even though maybe the spirit of judicial review floats around the words, it's not in Article 3. It comes from, say it with me, Marbury versus Madison established judicial review. So Section 2 then does go on. It talks about the right of a jury trial, and this will be later expanded with Amendment number 6, but basically saying that the all criminal trials will have jury trials unless it's a case of impeachment where you're taking down an official, then you don't need a jury trial. All right, giddy up. Let's look at Section 3. All right, let's look at Section 3, the last section of Article 3, which is very clear in how it defines treason. It says that treason can only be defined as waging war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to the enemy. And that goes on to say that in order to be convicted for treason, you have to have 2 witnesses to the same overt act of treason, or have the person being charged give open testimony in open court. So it's very specific that if you're going to be charged with treason, you're going to have 2 witnesses against you, or you're going to confess. It then goes on to say that Congress will set up kind of the punishment for treason, and that no attainder of treason shall be issued. And that basically means by blood or corruption that we can't punish your family for you being thought of being treasonous. So that's where the blood and kind of corruption comes in, and that goes back to kind of like the king and bloodlines and punishing people because of hereditary and yada yada yada. So there you go. Make sure that you check out other videos. If you click the gnome right here, this is my friend Noam Chomsky. Go ahead, do it. Click his face, and you'll go to my page and you can subscribe, and then you can allow me to live the life of a teacher gangster. And if you haven't checked the description below, click below down there and you're going to find tons of other EDU gurus that are giving good learning over the inner tubes. So there you go, guys. Thanks a lot. Where attention goes, energy flows. I'm out. Spit it out.